Welcome back, everybody, to Cinematic Reviews. Grab some popcorn, get your M&Ms ready, dim those lights, and let's talk Black Panther: Wakanda Forever.
Show them who we are.
So Black Panther: Wakanda Forever came out on November 11th, 2022. So we're coming on the 4 years so far of the Black Panther sequel. Looking at the box office here real quick, it grossed a whopping $859 million off of a $250 million budget, which seems to be a pretty decent payday, but this did have some mixed reactions to it as the sequel to the highly beloved and critically acclaimed Black Panther film. Now, of course, a lot of this is baked into, Chadwick Boseman passing away after the events of Avengers Endgame. So that had a really big kind of weight to hold for this sequel, especially for the fans. How are they going to handle his death? How are they going to move forward? Are they going to replace him? Is Shuri going to be the permanent Black Panther? Are they going to do some kind of secret heir to the throne? Fans didn't really know what to expect with this sequel once the news came out that Chadwick Boseman had passed away. And he was actually contracted to be in this movie as part of his big 5 or 6 movie deal when he signed on to become the Black Panther back in 2015 or 16 for Civil War, which was his debut as the character. But like I said, fans didn't really know what to expect. Turns out they kind of pivoted a little bit. They went with Shuri for this installment specifically. And at the post-credit scene, as you remember, it's revealed that he did have a son named T'Challa. Of course, Marvel keeping the T'Challa name connected to Black Panther in this way seems to be the best case scenario, I think. Now with San Diego Comic-Con, Marvel in Hall H, as they normally do, announced that T'Challa, the son of King T'Challa, will be taking over the throne, played by David Johnson, who you probably recognize from The Long Walk. I'm super excited for Black Panther 3. I really do like Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. It's one that I do have some minor issues with it. It's not the best Marvel movie out of all of these, but I think it's a pretty decent sequel. Even the cast alone is pretty great. You have Shuri, the sister to T'Challa, played by Letitia Wright once again. She was terrific in the first Black Panther movie. She was one of the, not necessarily the comedic beat of the movie, but she did have a lot of enthusiasm and energy, and she was a really cool person to have on screen to give the audience some joy, some excitement, just kind of get everybody wound up for the Black Panther movie, where Chadwick Boseman was more, somber, more serious in a way, didn't really joke a whole lot. That's kind of where his sister came into play, where she's this young princess, full of energy, full of enthusiasm, full of interest and making things. And in here, the death of her brother T'Challa really changed her. She ended up shifting more into how Chadwick Boseman was as he played Black Panther, more serious, more closed in, focused more on her duty as princess, as a potential Black Panther, to honor her brother. And in this movie, she really does struggle with losing T'Challa, and it's very heartfelt. A lot of us can probably relate to her. We've lost loved ones. I'm sure everybody has at some point, so you can feel her pain as she goes through this movie. And I thought it was a really good device of storytelling for our hero, who is Shuri in this sequel, to go through this, emotional turmoil and not knowing who she is and blaming herself for the death of her brother because she has all this tech, all this intelligence, and she couldn't save the one person that she cared most in the world. And it's really heartfelt. It's really heartbreaking. But it was a brilliant job by Letitia Wright. Fantastic job. Nakia returns as the former girlfriend or wife. I don't know if they ever really got married, but she was the love interest to Chadwick Boseman's T'Challa in this universe. And then, as I said in that post-credit scene, she reveals that they had a son together. She is now living in Haiti, but she does kind of come in and out of this story as she helps Shuri go up against Namor, the antagonist of the movie. Okoye returns as well. She's always a joy. She goes through a lot of emotional turmoil herself, losing T'Challa. And then we get to that one point in the movie, which we'll talk about during iconic scenes, of course, because it's such a powerful moment for Okoye. But when Shuri and Riri Williams get kidnapped by Namor, Queen Ramonda blames Okoye for that and fires her from the Dora Milaje, which was very heartbreaking for fans of Okoye like myself, who has been a true loyalist to Wakanda. And I know it was an emotional decision by Angela Bassett, but it was definitely unwarranted, and your heart just breaks for her. The one person in the world that cares so much about Wakanda, losing her position as the Dora Milaje for doing the one thing, doing her best to protect Wakanda. And it's totally heartbreaking, but she is fantastic. I love seeing her in this universe. M'Baku returns as well, and he's always a joy too, with his sarcasm but also his seriousness when he needs to be. I love M'Baku, and it looks like he's going to be in Avengers Doomsday, which I'm very excited for, played by Winston Duke, who is fantastic. And then, like I said, Angela Bassett returns once again as Queen Ramonda. She has taken over the throne from T'Challa after his death. She doesn't get a whole lot to do in this one. I wish she had more. A lot of her scenes have to do with, consoling Shuri, dealing with the loss of her son emotionally. But which I guess makes sense because this is Shuri's movie. But I would have liked a little bit more of Angela Bassett in here before her evident death, which is really, really heartbreaking. That scene always, makes me feel very emotional, because I love Angela Bassett. I love this character, Ramonda, that she has played, for so many years since the first Black Panther movie. And it's just heartbreaking to see another beloved Marvel character, meet their ultimate doom in this universe. And there's probably going to be more to come with Avengers Doomsday coming and some other sequels that are lined up. But truly heartbreaking to see her, unfortunately, pass away. Like I said, Namor is the villain of this movie. A character that Marvel has always teased about doing. I think in the early 2000s, they were planning on introducing Namor in some sort of capacity, whether it was a Namor movie, in the Fantastic Four, or some kind of Marvel movie. But they've been kind of sitting on this character for 20 plus years, and they finally included him in a Black Panther movie. And we're going to talk about him quite a bit. We have the villain scale on today, but we'll also do kind of a film versus comic book, because they did change quite a bit with him, and we'll break down that, of course. Some of the other supporting cast that I wanted to at least mention, like I said, Riri Williams plays Ironheart. She gets her own series later on, which we will talk about during our marathon, of course, but she's kind of like the potential replacement of Iron Man, not like the full replacement to Iron Man, but she kind of like taking her love and her respect and honor for the Iron Man symbol and kind of making it her own. She's a really intelligent engineer that's going to MIT. She ends up meeting Shuri and Okoye on campus at MIT because of her background in developing this vibranium detector for the U.S. government. And so that's where she kind of gets thrown into this mix, because Namor wants to destroy all the vibranium detectors, anybody that's built them, the scientists, the engineers, and that's where Riri Williams comes in. And she's really cool as Riri Williams. I like her take on it. Ironheart is a character that I'm not really too familiar with that part of the Marvel universe, but I do enjoy Dominic Throne's portrayal of Riri, and I do enjoy it more in the Ironheart series, which I'm very excited to rewatched for the marathon. Martin Freeman returns as Everett Ross, Shuri's favorite colonizer, as she likes to label him. Martin Sheen's always Freeman, not Martin Sheen, wrong Martin. Martin Freeman, excuse me, is always a joy to see on screen. And I love his Everett Ross character in the Marvel Universe. He's one of the many, many characters that we've been seeing pop up, kind of like interconnecting these. You have Wong, you have Ross, you now have Julia Louis-Dreyfus, who plays Valentina De Fontaine. She's been kind of bouncing in and out of different projects as well as an interconnected thing. So you have, instead of like one Agent Coulson, you now have like 5 or 6 different characters filling in that Agent Coulson to interconnect all these projects into this big universe, which is awesome. And Julia Louis-Dreyfus is fantastic too as Fontaine. We'll get to see more of her, of course, in the Thunderbolts movie when we rewatch that one for the show, and she's great. I love her inclusion in this. I love Martin Freeman's inclusion in this universe. They're getting some really big name actors in this Marvel universe, and I think with all the rumors going around, we may end up getting like a Matthew McConaughey caliber like actor, and hopefully a villain role. I know the top casting for him is Norman Osborn, aka Green Goblin, in the MCU, which would be fantastic, but Marvel is really starting to stack up some big names. We'll get the X-Men movie coming out. Ryan Gosling is joining as Ghost Rider. Like, they have some very, very awesome casting that Marvel has done. Very, very exciting. So that kind of like wraps up most of the casting, at least the important ones I wanted to mention. A couple of notes here, then we'll start getting to all the other mini segments that we have, iconic scenes, things like that. I wanted to mention Chadwick Boseman's death again, and just kind of that big impact that it had on Marvel fans and the crew and cast that worked with him over the years. I love that they changed the logo for this, that opening intro. Not only did they make it just Black Panther stuff, they cut the music out, which I thought was a perfect idea. I remember seeing this, in the theater, opening weekend, just like, holy crap. They did a fantastic job with honoring Boseman, and you're sitting there for the few seconds that's playing, and you're like, damn, I miss him. Miss Boseman, and they did a fantastic job with honoring him. And then they did that same thing with Spider-Man, where they included the music, of course, but it was all Tom Holland's Peter. And I hope they do that more, where they kind of personalize these Marvel logos at the beginning of these projects. We've gotten a few different iterations of it, like I think Black Widow might have done it. I know Loki did it for a time. I really hope that they keep doing this, and not just like the style of the wording or the music, but like include the pictures too, where you're just focusing on that one character. So like Shang-Chi. When we get the sequel to Shang-Chi, I really hope that we just get a bunch of scenes from the first movie, and then hopefully Avengers Doomsday, which he will be appearing in before his sequel, into that, opening intro for Marvel Studios. I hope they keep doing that, because it's a great idea, especially this one when they honored Boseman. It was fantastic. And they did a similar one with Avengers Endgame, where that one was silent too, I think, if I remember right, and it was just like the original 6, which was pretty cool. So they're getting really creative with these Marvel Studio logos at the beginning of each project, and I hope they continue doing it. But I really, really like the no music idea. That was fantastic. That was like the cherry on the top for it. I already mentioned it already, but I'll mention it again. Black Panther 3 is coming out. I don't think they have really given a subtitle for it. I would assume so, since this one had Wakanda Forever as a subtitle. Maybe we get like Rise of the King or Return of the King, maybe. But David Johnson will be playing the new T'Challa in the Marvel Universe. I'm very excited. I love that it's going to be a father-son dynamic, and it's not just going to be some kind of replacement for him. It'll be a bloodline that we're following, and that's really, really awesome. I'm very excited for Black Panther 3. Rumor is that Denzel Washington might be in it, which, again, A-class list cast. Like, they're really creating this incredible roster of actors for Marvel movies. And I'm very, very excited for Black Panther 3, especially after watching this one. After watching Wakanda Forever, I'm like, yes, I want more. I want more projects in this Black Panther part of the universe. It's really, really awesome to visit Wakanda. And the score. So the score for Wakanda Forever is one of my favorite scores in the MCU. The first Black Panther movie did an amazing job too with that score. I mean, it was nominated for an Oscar, I think, or even won an Oscar. I don't remember. I'd have to go back and look, or if anybody can just point it out in the comments. I know that it got nominated at least for an Oscar, but let me know in the comments below what it was. But anyways, the score for Wakanda Forever is fantastic. Done by Ludwig Göransson, who has made quite a name for himself, working with a bunch of different projects. But his score in this movie really got me, and I really love it. It's part of the reason why I rank this so high on the popcorn rating scale when we get to that part of the episode, because this score really hits it. Every song choice that they picked fits that scene, that moment in this movie so perfectly. And Ludwig is such a fantastic composer. He's one of my favorite composers right now, and he's truly, truly fantastic. I love the score. Chef's kiss is what I want to say is for the score. All right, let's get into all the fun little segments we have for today. So, not everything made the cut from the screen, of course. Let's see what changed with Namor. Namor is going to be the topic of today for the ink to screen segment. First off, he wears more bling in the movie than the comics, which I thought was an interesting choice. They went for a more like Aztec look to him, where originally, which is on the list as well, he lives in Talocan instead of Atlantis. You know, of course, DC, Aquaman from Atlantis. At the time, Jason Momoa's Aquaman was a big figure in the DC universe. Well, Marvel's like, well, we can't have our own Atlantis, so let's kind of make it more Aztec side of it more. So they went up with getting rid of Atlantis and coming up with Talocan as the home of Namor and his fellow blue people. In the movie, he's more community-minded as well. In the comics, from my research, he was more self-centered, more kind of like solo on his missions. Whereas in this movie, he's always looking out for his people. He's always getting counsel from his people. They're always joining him in battle. So I thought that was an interesting choice as well, to create this more of a community-like figure. You know, they call him Tuku Khan, as Winston Duke refers to, as like this godlike being that they kind of worship or serve in a way. So I thought that was an interesting choice as well. And then, of course, his powers are from the vibranium soiled enriched seaweed plant that they end up consuming. Rather than just being born with these mutant powers, they linked it to the vibranium so that they can have this sort of connection with Wakanda, since that is like the epicenter of the vibranium on Earth. They changed his origins of his powers too, which Marvel seems to be doing with a lot of these villains and character and heroes, changing the origins a little bit. You know, Miss Marvel, of course, talked a lot about that on that review episode, where they pretty much drastically changed how she got her powers and what her powers are. They seem to be doing the same thing here with Namor, as making it more Wakanda connected than just him simply being born this way as a mutant. But he used the word mutant, so all the fans in the audience went nuts because, oh my God, he said the word mutant. Here come the X-Men. You know, just every time somebody blurped mutant in one of these projects, you know, like Miss Marvel, everyone got their nerd boners ready to go for the X-Men. So those are the changes from the comics to the movie. I just want to bring that up. All right, next, let's roll back the tape and pick out our most iconic scene of Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. I got a couple options here, and then I will let you know what I think my most iconic scene is. So first, of course, we have the T'Challa death / funeral. This is what a way to open a movie. We don't see Chadwick Boseman, so I thought it was a fantastic idea. They didn't use a dummy. They didn't use CGI. They didn't use a stand-in. They just kind of kept him behind the curtain, which I thought was great. Perfect way to do this, you know, honoring Boseman, you know, not, you know, degrading his image or anything that the family would be against. So I thought that was a perfect choice. We have Shuri frantically working on her, you know, her AI and trying to create a cure for whatever disease or illness that T'Challa has. She ultimately doesn't get it created in time, and he passes away. And then we have this really heartfelt and beautiful funeral procession where you have all the Wakandans in white. They have his casket. They raise it up into the air. It was a beautiful, beautiful funeral scene, and the music, of course, was hit really hard. Next, we have the FBI crashing Riwi's garage, which we get to see her version of the Iron Man suit, her Ironheart suit, which was cool. It's a really cool action sequence, and it ends up leading into this car chase with Okoye and this really nice red muscle car that she built with her dad. It's a really cool action sequence. Okoye being fired by the Queen after Shuri and Riwi are taken by Namor. This is the scene that I was talking about. This is one of my favorite scenes in the movie, and it's because of Angela Bassett's acting and Okoye's acting, who I need to look up her name. She's from The Walking Dead. Danae Gurira? I probably butchered that name. I'm so sorry. But anyways, so Queen Ramonda fires Okoye, and she's like has this very emotional response to it. They're both, like going for an Oscar, basically, yelling at each other, crying at each other, like, what do you want me to do? I have suffered so much for this country, and I'm doing everything I need to do. And it just breaks my heart seeing Okoye basically get let go from her job because she was doing her best to protect the queen or the princess, and they went up against an unknown enemy that they have no idea what they can do or how powerful they were, and she was unmatched. And it just breaks your heart seeing her go through that. But it was a very, very powerful, powerful scene between these two actresses. It's one of my favorites. Namor attacking Wakanda, another great action sequence where he's flying around with his little wings on his ankles. He's destroying the ships, buildings. You got M'Baku on the ground fighting Namor, and he just gets laid out by one punch. It's just true chaos, and then this is where we lead into Namor killing the Queen of Ramonda, which is very, very unfortunate, where she's trying to protect Riri Williams. She ends up taking a couple of water grenade bombs, which was an interesting weapon of choice, where there were these canisters of water, but each one was like a giant wave, which was pretty cool to see, like effect-wise, when it came in contact with the palace and just annihilated Angela Bassett and Riri Williams, and they end up drowning. They're able to say Riri, not able to say the Queen, unfortunately, and then we get another funeral procession. So this results in Shuri trying to defeat Namor, and the only thing she can think of is to become the Black Panther. So we get this moment where she takes the herb and she goes to the ancestral plane, just like T'Challa did in the first movie. But she doesn't see her brother, she doesn't see her mother, doesn't even see her father. She sees Killmonger. Michael B. Jordan is back for this one scene as Killmonger, and it's intense. She is shocked. She's like, why are you here? Why am I seeing you? And Killmonger's like, you and I are not so different. We both want revenge. We want retribution. We want to see our enemies pay for what we have suffered. And she denies. And then eventually she picks up the Black Panther mantle and goes after Namor in the mission to kill him. Which leads to this epic battle between Namor and Black Panther on this beach. She ultimately decides not to kill him, but we have an intense battle here where she's like drying him out, where he basically disoriented the whole time. He's losing his strength because he needs water, and it's a really, really interesting battle. For me, the iconic scene, I think it's either going to be the T'Challa death/funeral or Okoye getting fired, because it's such a powerful scene from those two actresses, and there's so much emotion in there, and I think of it all the time when I think of Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. So I think for me, if I had to pick one of the two, I'm going to go with Okoye getting fired by the Queen, because that is the scene. I can hear Okoye screaming at the Queen. I can hear Angela Bassett screaming back at Okoye, and it's just branded into my brain. So the most iconic for me, when I think of the title Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, is that scene. Now, most of you guys are probably saying, hey, the T'Challa death, funeral, opening credit scene, that's the most iconic. That's what everybody thinks about. And you're absolutely right. That is very, very iconic. But for me, the first scene I think of is that scream match between the two ladies because it's so powerful. Next up, some lines become legend. Wait for it. Derry. Let's talk favorite quotes, everybody. Couple options here, and I'll let you know what my favorite is. So this is that kind of part of that argument I was talking about between Ramonda and Okoye. I am queen of the most powerful nation in the world, and my entire family is gone. Have I not given everything? Such a powerful line reading by Angela Bassett. This one from Namor. Only the most broken people can be great leaders. He's not wrong. This one from Nakia. To everyone, he was a king, but to me, he was everything. Speaking of T'Challa, he was her world, and it's heartbreaking to see him go. This one from M'Baku. The world has taken away too much for you to still be considered a child. Talking to Shuri and that one after the death of her mother and just kind of consoling her. This one from McCoy. A colonizer in chains. Now I have seen everything. Towards the end, seeing Martin Freeman in handcuffs after he helped Wakanda instead of the U.S. government, which I thought was great. I love her reaction to it. She's in that cool blue, bird hawk suit that she always said she would never wear, but Shuri was able to talk her into it. And then this one from M'Baku, which is my favorite quote out of the whole movie, where he goes, "You bald-headed demon," talking to Okoye. I absolutely love it. And he actually improvised that. That was all Winston Duke. He improvised that on set, and it is my favorite quote. It's fantastic. Now it's time to go behind the reel to talk about facts you might not have known about Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. So I got a couple here. The interior sequence on the MIT campus was actually filmed on the MIT campus. It's apparently a rarity for them to grant permission, but Ryan Coogler was persistent to do so. The dorm room, however, that we meet Riri Williams in, that was a set though. So they weren't able to go into the dorms, but they were able to film the outside in that concourse area on MIT where we see Riri Williams interacting with some students that she had jobs from. We have Okoye and Shuri talking to the queen on the little beads. So that was all filmed on MIT. But once we get into the dorm room, that was a built set. Chadwick Boseman initially signed up for a 5-picture deal with Marvel Studios back in 2014. This film would have been his final contractual appearance in live action as Black Panther in the MCU. Of course, they would have re-signed him because he was phenomenal as Black Panther, but this would have been his 5th and final picture for his contract. Shuri's hair is short a year after T'Challa's death, as research showed that many cultures on the African continent feature shaving your head as part of the mourning process. So I thought that was really cool. Daniel Kaluuya, probably remember him from the first Black Panther movie, was set to return as W'Kabi, but dropped out due to scheduling conflicts with Jordan Peele's Nope. He's fantastic in Jordan Peele's Nope, so I'm kind of glad that he ended up, filming that instead. I think it would have been cool to see him in maybe a few minutes of screen time, but honestly, we really didn't need him in this. The last time we saw him, he was basically imprisoned or banished for siding with Killmonger. So I think it was best to just kind of set him off to the side. We didn't really need him in this movie. And then Rihanna wanted to be involved with the film from the moment she saw the first trailer. She recorded the song Lift Me Up as a personal tribute to Chadwick Boseman. I love that song, Lift Me Up. She did a fantastic job with it. It was really good, really good. All right, so as you can tell, I really enjoyed rewatching this. It's a fantastic movie. Again, it's not the greatest Marvel movie ever made, but it's not as bad as a lot of people think it is. I definitely had a fun time rewatching this. When I first saw this, I was pretty low on it, but as I rewatched it over the years, it's a really fun movie. I know it's got a lot of different storylines. This ends up branching out into Ironheart. Ends up being a part of the What If series in a way. But I think this does a pretty decent job at, kind of kicking up into Doomsday. And it looks like we're going to be spending a lot of time in Wakanda in Avengers Doomsday. So this is really, really exciting to be watching this movie this year. All right, so let's head over to the rankings for all the MCU villain scale and all that fun stuff. But we'll take a break first before we dive into all that. This episode is brought to you by Dubby Energy. Still drinking energy that quits before you do? Stop crashing, stop shaking, and start performing. Meet Dubby Energy, clean energy made for gamers, creators, and anyone who refuses to slow down. With zero sugar, no jitters, and no crash, Dubby keeps you locked in whether you're grinding ranked, streaming for hours, or pushing through those late nights. There's no crash, no fade, just gas. Drink different, perform better. Grab Dubby Energy and use code Cinematic10 to get 10% off your order today. All right, welcome back, everybody, for the rankings for Wakanda Forever. Perfectly balanced, as all rankings should be. Let's take a look at the MCU rankings first. So I've got Wakanda Forever at number 41 on the list. Kind of looking at that part of the MCU ranking here. So I got Wakanda Forever at 41. I Am Groot at 42. Eyes of Wakanda at 43. Ironheart at 44. Miss Marvel at 45. The Falcon and the Winter Soldier at 46. Agatha All Along at 47. The Incredible Hulk at 48. Thor the Dark World at 49. And She-Hulk at 50. So 41 seems kind of low. But you have to remember, there's like 55 projects in the MCU right now. I know it's kind of towards, the back third of the list, but it's definitely better than a lot of people give it credit for. I know I've seen rankings where, it was like way lower than this, like almost into the 50s, but it's obviously not better than the Black Panther. Like, I'll say that right now. It's the first movie just was something special. With the villain with Killmonger is one of the best in the MCU. Namor is decent, and we'll talk about him next year. But it wasn't Killmonger level. Like, he's a good example. Thanos is a really good example. Green Goblin and No Way Home is a really good example on a really good villain in the MCU. Namor is just kind of middle of the pack. He's not terrible, but he's not like absolutely awesome. He's got an interesting backstory, but for me, it's the villain, and it's the fact that it's just Shuri being the Black Panther just didn't feel right. I know it sounds crazy to say, but it's just I like her better as Shuri than the Black Panther. And maybe this was kind of like Marvel experimenting, like, hey, what if we did Shuri as a Black Panther? How would people react? Or, we don't really know what we're doing, so, well, Shuri seems to be a fan favorite. Let's just make her the Black Panther. I don't know, she wasn't the best part of this movie, which, a lot of people can say Chadwick Boseman wasn't the best part of the Black Panther movie either. It was actually Killmonger. It's just, that's not how I feel about the Black Panther whatsoever. I think Chadwick Boseman is fantastic in the Black Panther. Like, I think his performance in that is very underrated. And I know it gets kind of overshadowed by Killmonger a little bit, but it's not to the degree of this where I really don't think Shuri is the best part. There's moments of this movie where I'm like, oh yeah, that's right, Shuri is the lead of this movie. But I'm more invested in M'Baku and Queen Ramonda and Okoye and Riri Williams. Like, it's just, she's not at the forefront of her own movie, and she was supposed to be the new Black Panther. She's supposed to be at the center of this, and it's just, and I don't blame Letitia Wright. I think it really just goes down to the writing. It's the writing. It's the direction, and it's just the writing. And it's just not as good as it could have been. This could easily have been in the 30s or even the 20s. But it's sitting right there on the edge at 41. But that's where I ranked Wakanda Forever. Next, let's dive into the villain. It's time to see where Namor ranks. Well, again, we're going to look at the motivation, we're going to look at the costume, and we're going to look at the performance. So, costume. Like I said, he has more bling on him than in the comics. They went more of like this Aztec vibe to him, because that's kind of where they set it at versus Atlantis. I love the wings on the ankles. That seems to be very comic accurate. He's got some of the Aztec piercings in him. He looked pretty cool as Namor. He's got the pointy ears. He's got the short hair. The CGI when he's singing and swimming and flying around looked pretty legit. So I think costume-wise, it was pretty good. Motivation. This is kind of where I'm not fully on board with the writing. So apparently he's pissed off at the surface world, because they casted him out as a mutant. Back in a long time ago. It's kind of Magneto-ish, and it's too similar to Magneto. And I think if they would have tweaked it a little better, it would have, they could have executed it much better on screen. It just, his motivation and the writing standpoint just wasn't quite there for me. But the performance I thought was great. I need to look up the actor's name. I can never remember his name. Tanaka Hirata, I think. Probably butchered his name as well. I'm so sorry. I'm terrible at pronouncing names. But I think he did a great job at portraying Namor. And it looks like he's going to be a pretty decent part in Doomsday, which is great, because I thought he was fantastic. It just, in all, this movie comes down to the writing and the direction that Marvel and Coogler and all the producers and everything went with this movie. And that's ultimately what hold this movie back, is the writing and the direction that it was going with. And honestly, I don't know what direction they were going with. It was kind of in this weird state of Marvel where they didn't know what to do. They were going to do Kang. Jonathan Majors fucked up outside of Marvel, and they had to fire him. And they're just like, okay, well, now what do we do? Now they have pivoted to Doctor Doom, which seems great. But this was in that state of Marvel where they didn't know what the hell they were doing with these, Phase 4, Phase 5, and even part of Phase 6. They just didn't know what they were doing. So the writing is ultimately there. So with how I rank Namor, I'm giving him 4 Thanos heads, mainly because of the costume and the performance. But like I said, the writing really holds him back as a villain. It holds the movie back as like the overall Marvel movie. But he still did a really good job. I liked it. And now it's time to hand out the popcorn for the popcorn rating. I'm giving this 4 popcorns, which is a little bit higher than I originally thought. When I first saw this movie, it was more in like the 3 popcorn range. But now after this rewatch, I've moved it up to 4. I really like the score. Like I said, it's chef's kiss. 2 thumbs up to Ludwig Göransson. I love the cast. For me, like I said, the writing holds this movie back a lot, and the direction that Marvel was going with at the time. If this movie was coming out now, where they had more of an idea of where they wanted to go in the future, this could have been much better. But like I said, this was in that time of Marvel where fans were fatigued. They were burnt out on Marvel stuff. Marvel didn't really know where they were going with this quote-unquote Marvel multiverse saga with Kang and all that other stuff. So it was in a weird spot for Marvel, and the writing and the direction just wasn't there. So that's why I'm giving it 4 popcorns on the popcorn scale. But we're not going to roll the credits just yet. So stick around because we're going to end with some news and reactions coming up here. We got the X-Men casting. We're going to look at the box office tracker for Spider-Man Brand New Day. But that is my review for Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Thanks for stopping by, but we're going to take another short break, and we'll dive into news and reactions here for a little bonus segment. All right, welcome back again. We got news and reactions coming here. First up, we're going to react to the box office breakdown for Spider-Man Brand New Day. So looking at the worldwide box office for Spider-Man, $1.2 billion. That is massive, and I think it's already projecting to hit 1.7, 1.8 by the end of this weekend, which is fantastic for the movie. I love seeing it hit $1 billion. Will it hit 2? I don't think so. Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to quite hit 2. It might get up to that No Way Home range of like 1.9. But we'll see. Maybe it'll surprise me and hit 2 billion. But I think it's with some other movies coming out and it eventually hitting streaming and all that. It's probably going to cap at like No Way Home level, 1.8, 1.9. But I'll be ecstatic if this hits 2 billion worldwide. Looking at the domestic, if past 500,000, 553K to be exact for the domestic box office, which is fantastic for US and Canada. That is an astounding number for that. So that is the box office breakdown for Spider-Man Brand New Day. We'll check in with that maybe in a couple of weeks, and we'll see where it's at. For today's reaction, we have a casting for X-Men. It is Kit Connor, who I'm not really sure who he is. Let's take a look at him real quick. Let me pull up his IMDb here. Kit Connor. So he has been in Rocket Man, Heartstopper. What has he done? Heartstopper Forever seems to be his newest one. Oh, he was Tommy in Warfare. That's a great movie, the Alex Garland movie with Will Poulter and Joseph Quinn. Fantastic in there. But Kit Connor, I'm not too familiar with him. He definitely looks the part. I'm excited for him to be the new Cyclops. That is a casting that I've been waiting for. I know the biggest one will be Wolverine when that eventually gets announced. But Cyclops, from what I've been seeing and reading, Cyclops seems to be the center of the X-Men now. You know, where before Wolverine was kind of like at the forefront. Hugh Jackman was like the image of X-Men. It sounds like Marvel wants to lean more into Cyclops as the leader, as the poster child for the X-Men movie, that part of the universe. So I thought it was cool. But Kit Connor is our new Cyclops. I'm very excited for the new X-Men movie, which is supposedly set to come out in 2028. So very, very excited. We're going to probably get more castings down the road. We've already got the Emma Frost casting. Of course, we got the Sadie Sink casting because of Spider-Man. She's playing Jean Grey. And now we have Cyclops. So we're getting there. We almost have the team together. I know there's auditions going on for Professor X and for Magneto. I think Jensen Ackles was the most recent one that I saw get rumored as Magneto, which would be great. I think he would be awesome as Magneto. We need Wolverine, of course, Nightcrawler, Iceman. Like, we're getting there. So very excited for that. So that's going to do it for today's episode. Until next time, keep it cinematic, everybody. Have a good weekend.